on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:07. It's O'Connor and Company. Thanks for joining us this Friday morning in your nation's capital. Coming up at 7:35, Tony Schaefer. He's going to be the Grand Marshal of the Veterans Day Parade. Oh, yeah. Happy Veterans Day, everybody. Happy Veterans Day.
Yes.
Tomorrow,
Happy
technically, but today observed.
That's right.
And happy birthday to the Marine Corps.
And happy Friday to all.
There you go, Patrice Sadluka. Gotta get it in there. 8:05, Rich Anderson, chairman of the Republican Party in Virginia. And at 8:35, Brett Baer. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Patrice Onwuka. And Patrice, we got to turn back to Israel now and get the latest there. Now, I mentioned Brett Baer joining us at 8:35. He actually interviewed Benjamin Netanyahu on his program yesterday.
Oh, wow.
And quite a bit of news coming out of that interview and that discussion. Some updates, though, in terms of what we're seeing in the media's involvement now, or what we're learning about the media involvement. So there were photojournalists, photographers. These are freelancers. They're stringers. This is pretty common practice for international news organizations, that they don't have full-time employees, but they pick up people who basically immediately become affiliated with them in any various nation, specifically to cover one story. Sometimes it's retroactive. You're a freelance journalist. You go out, especially a photographer. You happen to be in the right place at the right time. You're getting pictures of a news event. After the fact, AP will say, listen, we've worked with you in the past. Why don't we? Consider that work you did for us. We get the photos. We'll pay you. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there's definitely, it's more than just I'll buy what you've got. It's really more, you were working on our behalf.
As a contractor, yeah.
Right, as you did this. So it appears, and we discussed this briefly yesterday, photographers were embedded with the terrorists as they breached the border.
Yes, that is crazy.
There's one video of one of these photographers who's driving on a motorcycle with a team of terrorists, zipping across the border toward this music festival where the massacre occurred, and he's got a grenade in his hand, which is, pretty standard fare for a photojournalist. That's
insane.
Yeah.
So obviously he's part of and complicit to what took place on October 7th.
Right. And then the AP and CNN both, and a couple of other news agencies, basically, and Reuters, funded this freelancer, paid him money, and had in the past, and did even for the events in Gaza. Associated Press has now issued this statement. AP has no knowledge of the October 7th attacks before they happened. The first pictures AP received from any freelancer show they were taken more than an hour after the attacks began. No AP staff were at the border at the time of the attacks, nor did the AP staffer cross the border at any time. We are no longer working with Hassan Eslaya, who had been an occasional freelancer for AP and other international news organizations in Gaza. AP uses images taken by freelancers around the world. When we accept freelance photos, we take great steps to verify the authenticity of the images and that they show what is purported. The role of the AP is to gather information on breaking news events around the world, wherever they happen, even when those events are horrific and cause mass casualties. In other words, we're going to run these pictures even though they were taken by somebody who seemed to be embedded with the terrorists, because it's news and it's our job to give you the news. But, if the 9/11 terrorists had taken pictures and uploaded them from the cockpit of the airplane, would the AP and the CNN, pay the family money and run those pictures? I mean, that's financing and funding these people who were part of it. And by saying we're cutting ties and no longer using them, that's tantamount to admission that they know that there's something really wrong here.
So 2 points, maybe 3. Number one, there's a difference between being embedded and capturing images as they're happening, and being embedded and carrying a grenade, which to me suggests that you were going to use it. So you are, in fact, part and parcel of the attack. That's number one. Number two, this guy, people are questioning whether this was a doctored video. I literally it's on Twitter. He was live streaming this from his Facebook page, which now I went to it. It's conveniently shut down. His account is disabled right now. So this person is very much not, they're utilizing the press and their press access to enact his own personal will and desire. And then I think the third point is when it comes to journalists, and hey, the journalists out there, the photographers out there, you tell me different. If you know something deadly is about to happen, and yes, you are there to capture what's going to happen, but do you not have a responsibility to alert authorities, or at least to alert the people who are going to pay you for the pictures that you were about to snap, that there is something deadly about to happen? This guy didn't just happen to be on a motorcycle with the motorcade of Hamas terrorists going into...
Right.
to attack the music festival. He didn't just happen to walk in there and be at the right place at the right time. Obviously,
Right.
he knew what was going to happen. Is there not a responsibility, even if it's not a professional responsibility, a personal moral responsibility to alert someone to what's about to happen, because you know it's about to happen unless you support what is about to happen?
That's right.
And see,
unless
point
you
number
want
one.
those people, unless you want those people to die.
Exactly.
Absolutely. You are no longer a journalist at that point. You are now recording the events. You are cooperating in the events, and you're recording those events and then profiting off of them, 100%. And CNN and AP are very sorry. They're sorry they got caught.
Well, didn't
They're
AP
sorry they
News
got-
had a bureau in the same building as Hamas?
Right.
Am I wrong on that? I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure that
That
was...
is correct. That is correct. Well, Hamas did that on purpose because that way when the building gets bombed, then the media says, you're bombing our reporters. So
It's
that's,
crazy.
yeah. Although knowing Pulitzer, they'll give these guys the Pulitzer Prize for photojournalism.
probably will.
Because, wow, look
They
at those
probably
vivid
will.
images. It's
It was
amazing
like
he
you were
could
right
take
there
that.
from the start.
He could how did he take that picture with
How
one
did you
hand
know?
while holding a grenade? It's incredible. All right, meanwhile, Dana Bash yesterday, who's been reporting on the troubling rise of anti-Semitism here in the United States, had a sit-down with a Tulane student who had his nose broken when arguing with pro-Palestinian, which is tantamount to being pro-Hamas protesters right now. And by the way, I want to say, because we've seen these videos, Gal Gadot screened all those atrocities from out at the museum.
Superwoman.
At the Wonder Woman.
Sorry, Wonder Woman. Oh my gosh, how could I make such a bad mistake?
I am
Yes, Wonder
I am
Woman.
a
Oh my gosh.
comic book
Yes.
geek. Don't do that.
Okay.
Screened it at the Museum of Tolerance, by the way, which whole purpose of being is to educate people about the Holocaust, and so it should never happen again. And outside of the movie screening, so-called pro-Palestinian protesters started beating up Jews out in front of the Museum of Tolerance. In
There
New
you
York
go.
yesterday, we had pro-Israel protesters, pro-Palestinian protesters, violence broke out. And I'm telling you, I have seen these videos for the last several weeks, and I would love for somebody to show me the video where the pro-Israel protester starts the violence. And I usually don't use unequivocal language on the radio because you can always find something. But from what I have seen, every single one, and I mean every single one, and let me repeat, every single act of violence at these protests is instigated by the so-called, pro-peace, pro-Palestinian, and the occupation crowd. The ones who are on the same side as the terrorists.
Yeah.
So we'll get to Dana Bash in a moment because she had a long interview with these college students who have been violently attacked for being Jewish and standing up for the state of Israel. And as Dana Bash called it, it's a tsunami of Jew hate.
Yeah.
And then she asked the question, what's happening and why? Well, we can actually answer that question for Dana Bash, and we will in a moment. It's 6:15, WMAL Traffic.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live.
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Miss anything? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Get today's breaking news on the Vince Colonnese Show, weekdays 3 to 6, right here on WMAL.
Let's listen to Cut 4 here. This is the attack in New York City last night, where a Jewish man hit in the head with a chair, and then listen to the crowd around him after it happens. Is that Nelson Muntz from The Simpsons? What is happening there?
I remember that laugh. I remember.
Yeah,
that.
so
You know,
that's
laugh.
so there's your peace-loving pro-Palestinian. Oh, let's have a ceasefire so we can get water and fuel to the babies of Palestine. They hit the guy in the head as he's laying there bleeding out. They're mocking and laughing at him. And again, I'd love for somebody
It's
to show me when
disgusting.
the pro-Israel protesters start the violence. So Dana Bash calls it a tsunami of hate. What's happening and why? God bless you, Dana Bash, but we've seen this coming for about 15 to 20 years.
Oh, of course.
20 years ago, when Ann Coulter or Michelle Malkin or David Horowitz goes to a college campus to speak, and there's a near riot that breaks out, again, from the left, because they don't want people to speak on campus. When Ben Shapiro or Matt Walsh or Liz Wheeler or Michael Knowles.
Most recently, Riley Gaines.
Or Riley
when it comes
Gaines.
to women's sports.
And suddenly there's violence. There's violence. The college campuses have been breeding grounds for intolerance, left-wing intolerance. My friend Scott Walker, the governor, former governor, and the person who runs Young America's Foundation, says we've been warning about how out of control college campuses are at schools for years now. Take notice, people. This did not happen overnight. And it's that old thing, first they came for the conservatives, and I didn't say anything because I'm not a conservative. And now supporting pro-Israel is the same thing as being one of those MAGA fascists who deserve to be punched in the face.
Well, and the sad part is you've got it's the same group of kids who are doing this. And, give or take plus or minus one or two, but they all seem to view themselves either as oppressed or oppressed sympathizers.
Yeah.
And it is both
Allies.
fashionable. Yeah, they call themselves allies, but it is both fashionable and socially, not just acceptable, demanded that you are on their side and that you are vitriolic in your language and violent in your behavior. And they justify it. They think that somehow that they have some moral superiority because they are unleashing what other people, their oppressed brothers and sisters throughout history and across the world have not been able to do, and which is to unleash their own version of violence against other people. They are so misguided. They are frankly so stupid. You could go to the best institutions and be the dumbest person in the world, and unfortunately, that's what's on display right now.
Yeah, and Dana Bash has finally discovered. Dana, let me tell you, would you be as concerned if these violent protesters on college campuses, if they changed their name to Palestinian Lives Matter? Because there's not a big difference between what the PLM people are doing today to pro-Israel and Jewish kids on campus than what BLM did in the summer of 2020. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, cut 3 here, told CNN that they've seen that she's been trying to warn her fellow Democrats. Listen.
This is an issue that I've been warning the party about for a long time, that young people have been increasingly concerned about the status of human rights of Palestinians for years now. And it has been growing and growing. And I think what young people really want to see is an assertive stance from this administration.
Yeah, understand a couple of things. First of all, I think her voice is raspy because she's been screaming from the river to the sea at the top of her lungs in those protests. But when she says, I've been trying to warn my fellow Democrats, that headline makes it sound like this is a real problem and we need to educate these students and young people so they know the truth about the Middle East and be on the side of our ally Israel. No. When she says I've been warning Democrats, she's been warning them that Democrats are on the wrong side of the issue.
Yeah.
And Democrats need to change their policies to accommodate these as you just rightly put it, Patrice, absolutely ignorant individuals who don't see the reality of what's going on in the Middle East. It's 6:21. A little bit more roundup here on the Israel story and the media reaction to it. First, I do want to say, can't believe this. Protests down on Capitol Hill yesterday. This was a group who was demanding a ceasefire. Demand a ceasefire. Always left-wing groups. They demanded a ceasefire like an hour after the massacres on October 7th. Okay, we killed 1,400 of yours. Let's have a ceasefire now. Senator John Fetterman walked out of a building right near where all these people were being arrested, and he reached into his pocket and pulled out an Israeli flag.
Oh,
and
wow.
waved it, smiling at them as they were being arrested. It got caught on video by one of the protesters.
Well, I applaud that. A broken clock can be right twice a day, right?
There you go. You know how people were thinking there's a body double for John Fetterman? That was sort of a little internet rumor. Maybe it's true. Maybe this is the body double.
He looks back to the old John Fetterman we know. Well, I'm not going to take away.
No.
Kudos to John Fetterman for doing the right thing. Yeah.
Here's my favorite, though. NBC News, the organization that hosted the debate in Florida, fact-checked Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis said, I sent planes over to Israel, and I brought back over 700 people to safety, right? Fact-check. This is half true. DeSantis signed an executive order that allowed the Florida Division of Emergency Management to pay for Americans in Israel to fly back to the U.S., but the flights were organized by another entity. So, as governor, he authorized it, he paid for it, and then this group did it. Did they want him to fly the plane himself?
Apparently. And hey, they're not even disputing the number. He said the number here says nearly 700 people were evacuated, according to the government. So they're not disputing the number. They're not disputing the fact that people were evacuated. They're not disputing the fact that the governor was the one who made it happen.
Yes.
So I don't even know what the fact check is for.
The fact check is for stupid people to think that Ron DeSantis lied. Or to sanctimoniously make the prigs over at NBC News feel like they're superior. Well, actually, Ron DeSantis didn't actually pilot the planes.
He didn't strap them in. He didn't pour their drinks and offer them coffee. I guess that doesn't count.
And let me repeat. This is from NBC News, the organization that hosted the debate itself. Another great decision. It's 6:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
Now,
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:37. Thanks for joining us on this Friday. Veterans Day observed in our nation's capital. Happy Veterans Day to all who served, and, by the way, to the families of those who served, because you were a big part of that story as well. Coming up later this morning at 7:35, Tony Schaefer on his involvement as Grand Marshal of the Veterans Day Parade. 8:05, Rich Anderson, chairman of the Republican Party in Virginia. We'll get more information about what we learned from Ronna McDaniel yesterday. If you were listening, that was Ronna McDaniel saying that she had no involvement in the Virginia election. She was told to stay out, offered money, said your money's not needed here. Maybe Rich Anderson has a different story. We'll see. 8:35, Brett Baer will be joining us. That's all coming up. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Patrice Onwuka.
That's right.
Well, big news for our friends in West Virginia. And we do have a lot of listeners in West Virginia or who live in West Virginia and start listening to us as they commute in.
Sure.
Senator Joe Manchin made a big announcement yesterday. Take a listen.
After months of deliberation and long conversation with my family, I believe in my heart of hearts that I have accomplished what I set out to do for West Virginia. I have made one of the toughest decisions of my life and decided that I will not be running for re-election to the United States Senate. But what I will be doing is traveling the country and speaking out to see if there is an interest in creating a movement to mobilize the middle and bring Americans together. To the West Virginians who have put their trust in me and fought side by side to make our state better, it has been my honor of my life to serve you. Thank you.
All right, a couple of things here. First, about Joe Manchin personally, what it means to him personally, and how it might affect the rest of us. That part where he said he's going to be traveling around, talking to people to see if he can find, a middle. Is he running?
I think it's fair to ask that question. I mean, it's obvious. He's not stepping away from politics. He's just stepping away from running for re-election as a West Virginia senator. So yeah, I think.
Is this like a no labels thing?
I think so. So he also penned an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal titled "Why I Won't Be Seeking Re-Election to the Senate," and he starts out lashing out against Democrats for not being willing to do anything on abortion, and then he lashes out at Republicans because because they didn't want to join him when he was hoodwinked by Joe Biden into passing the green smaller version of the Green New Deal. So he says no. He says there's a middle road on every issue from inflation to energy, and he's going to travel around the country to do so, and speaking to see if there's building momentum. Absolutely, he's going to run for president.
He went ahead and
that's what it is.
Yeah, and then
I think he's absolutely going to run for president, Larry. I'm waiting now.
With all due respect to Senator Manchin, that all the I tried to get Democrats to come back off the green. He voted for it. He voted for it. He did. He was the deciding vote.
He was hoodwinked, if you want to call it hoodwinked, but he did.
Well, if he was
so
hoodwinked, then he has
unpassive.
no business being a senator. I'm sorry. Joe, that crafty, clever, mega mind Joe Biden outsmarted me. Are you kidding me? Then he should step down. It's ridiculous. I'm tired of Joe Manchin's shtick. It's, we need to find reasonable people in the middle. Every opportunity he had, he could have just switched to the Republican Party. What is his opposition? I have yet to understand what his opposition to the Republican Party is.
It's a good question. He's unabashedly pro-life, so that absolutely puts him out of pretty much 99% of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, he's anti-climate change. He's
for low taxes. I'm pretty sure.
He votes for most
business,
national security measures. He's anti-big
reduce regulations.
Spending. Yeah, no, he's contributing to the idea that the Republican Party's ideas are good, their policies are good, but they're icky. Sorry, okay. Anyway, so Joe Manchin, you're right. I think he's going to, maybe it's what's going to be a Larry Hogan Joe Manchin ticket now, or a Joe Manchin Larry Hogan ticket, or they'll try to do this whole third-party independent thing, and I don't know if it'll make much of a difference.
I welcome it. No, Larry, I welcome it in the general election. Let him siphon off votes from the Democrats.
I think he will mostly, yeah. And even if he siphons off votes in Virginia, did you know that West Virginia, not Virginia, West Virginia voted for Trump by the largest margin of any state in the Union?
Yeah.
And so Joe Manchin was the last guy standing there for the Democrats in that state.
Yep.
It's over. This is an automatic pickup for Republicans in the Senate.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt. And that may mean that it's the current governor, Jim Justice, who will get that. Let's not forget who Jim Justice is. He's got this big bulldog that he likes to bring with him into the office. And here he was, Bette Midler was criticizing West Virginia, and he had a message for Bette Midler.
They told every bad joke in the world about us. And so from that standpoint, Baby Dog tells Bette Midler and all those out there, kiss her hiney.
He picked up the bulldog and displayed the dog's Baby Dog's posterior to the assembled mass there. I don't know if you've ever seen a bulldog from behind, but they don't hide much there. It's all right out there for everyone to see. A little chocolate starfish situation. All right, a little bit more on Joe Manchin and this quest for the middle by the high-minded, sensible, not icky Republican types. We'll tell you about that and whether Joe Manchin is teaming up with Mitt Romney. It's 6:43. Yes, the extremists on the right and the left in this country. Why can't people be more reasonable like me? Which is, by the way, probably the thought process for 90% of all Americans. Yeah, everyone. How many of you think that you're the reasonable one? I'm not extreme. I have very reasonable, traditional, patriotic, American foundational positions. And the next thing you know, AOC and Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden are calling you an extremist, right? And I assure you, Bernie Sanders thinks that he really represents what the founders of this country really intended. He really represents the principles found in the Constitution. He's the reasonable. You ask Bernie Sanders, do you think that you're really left wing? No, I'm pretty moderate, actually. Everybody thinks they're in the middle. Everyone. It's a psychological phenomenon. So now. But here's Joe Manchin, and Mitt Romney is also leaving the party, right? And
he's not running for re-election.
Exactly. Not I don't mean the political party. I mean the party. It's a party every day here in Washington. He also wants to move on, and it just so happens that the two of them yesterday introduced a bill together on the floor of the Senate, creating a commission. A commission responsible for stabilizing the national debt. This is so quintessential Washington. D.C. establishment. We're above the fray. We're not extremists. He's a Democrat. I'm a Republican. We're just trying to get things done. And here's what we're going to do to fix things. We're going to create a commission.
If only, I mean, people already see through this veiled attempt at, and listen, I'm excited that somebody wants to actually tackle entitlement reform, but they're not going to do that. The commission is just going to give them and some buddies an opportunity to get together, put some 800-page report out that's never going to see the light of day, give them an opportunity to get a couple of headlines, and then they're going to try and probably do some third-party bids, or maybe figure out some fundraising off of this to be able to be, quote, kingmakers. I'm not convinced. And it is interesting.
Nor should you be.
Yeah,
I mean,
nobody is. I mean,
Patrice,
nobody buys
you
into
said you're
this.
happy somebody wants to tackle entitlement reform. I don't think they want to tackle entitlement reform. You know how I know Joe Biden doesn't want to tackle entitlement reform?
He said
because he's been in office since 2010, and he decides to finally put together a bill to start a commission the very day that he announces his retirement. You know what, pal? You wanted to fix this? You've been there since. And what was the very beginning of his statement? I've looked back and I've decided I've accomplished everything I set out to do. Really? You set out to put us $30 trillion in debt? That's what you set out to do? You've accomplished it. And now he wants to do a commission on his way out the door. I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of that game. And Joe Manchin's been the worst at it, where he pretends to be above it all. But you know how many federal judges that Joe Biden and Barack Obama put forth that Joe Manchin rubber stamped? You say that you're a proud pro-lifer who's against abortion? Let's look at every single judge you put through that encouraged more and more and more abortions from day one.
If Manchin has done anything, and it is by leaving that he easily opens the door to a 50-50 split. And I'm just talking the sheer politics of this. If President Trump or the Republican nominee, whomever that is, next year wins, theoretically the vice president will be that 51st tie-breaking vote. That is big, and especially big if the House continues to stay in Republican hands and expands its numbers. So that Manchin clearing the way for such a wonderful scenario then actually means we can undo some of the damage that President Biden has done in his 3 years, almost 3 years in office, going on 4 years in office, or however long it's been. It's been an expensive time.
Damage that was done with Joe Manchin's support.
So
and now he wants to go fix
way.
it. Yeah.
Clear the
652. When you hear the term tax plan, you may think April 15th, but at Abish Financial, they're teaching people to look at taxes through a slightly different lens.